So it's been 10 years of Endless, and I want to kind of summarize those 10 years in maybe 10 minutes. The first moment was an aha insight when I was in India and I saw a computer on the TV on the wall. I had my phone in my hand and I realized everyone's about to have a smartphone. That's a computer, that's a processor more powerful than yesterday's computers. And if you plug that into a TV, and everyone in emerging markets has TVs, you can use that as the monitor, add a keyboard, and all of a sudden everyone can have a computer. Everybody with a smartphone can have a computer. That was, aha insight number one. I spent months, and I spent almost a year researching it, just understanding conceptually from Silicon Valley, does this work? And then I spent months traveling through emerging markets, going to country after country after country after country, trying to understand, do people want this? And then all of the nuances behind that question. And the answer was so clear. People want computers, they want phones, they want both. What we realized then was that, again, this is twists and turns and jumbles, to get to the insights that we now really understand clearly, was that it didn't just have to be a smartphone, that you could take a smartphone processor and make a little box so that someone could buy the effective equivalent of a Raspberry Pi, a little ARM processor, smartphone processor, that powers a device that plugs into a TV. And so in the process of doing that, we realized we had to build, it sounds crazy, but our own operating system. In other words, you couldn't take Windows and you couldn't make it do that. You couldn't take Apple and make it do that. And those were the two options. The third option was Linux. And so what we did was we took Linux, which historically has a reputation for being really complicated, and we spent a ton of time in the field with users, and we designed it in understanding their needs. We put, back in the day when we had no technology, we'd put a PDF in front of them and be like, how would you find X? And we'd understand that they were confused finding whatever it was that they needed to find. And so we kept iterating on the design. But the core of it basically was, if you made it as simple as a phone, they could figure it out. And the core of a phone is your apps are on your desktop. So the notion of an app-based PC solved all usability issues. Now, everyone we put it in front of understood it. The next big insight was, well, people don't have internet access. I mean, they're just, at the time there was no internet there, and now it's still, very, very sparse, very, very expensive for a lot of people. And so what we realized was that if you think about the internet as having wires and always needing always-on connectivity, your computer really basically is one app. It's a browser. If that browser doesn't work, then you have all the other apps. But if all those other apps don't work without internet, then your computer's useless. That's basically the way Windows works. That is the way Chrome OS works. So the insight that we had that was told to us by people in the field and taught to us by people in the field was, if you build apps and you put stuff inside of those apps, and those things work without internet, Wikipedia, Khan Academy, lots of different creation tools, all these things, and you just by default put them inside of it and then refresh it, then all of a sudden the computer works well. And that insight, to fully wrap our head around it, I think that was literally years to fully wrap our head around all of the permutations, all of the ideas that you could leverage on top of this core kernel of an idea that storage is really cheap and bandwidth is really expensive and not everywhere. So that insight was, a chapter. In parallel with that chapter was this realization that you had to ship the operating system and you had to put it on computers, and other manufacturers at the time wouldn't ship our operating system on their computers. We had to build our own hardware. So this is the stakes are too important. The stakes are higher, more important than the challenges. We will find a way over the challenges. If that means we're going to build hardware, we're going to build hardware. And so we went and did that, and we built what I think is the cheapest computer in the world at the time. So the beauty of that actually is that when that launched and when the manufacturers saw the power of what we had and saw the interest in what we had, all of a sudden they wanted to ship our operating system on their computers. And so we were in regions of the world, and like in Southeast Asia, we were on more computers by default showing up in these computers than Windows was. We had over 50% market share across all of Southeast Asia, a region of 1 billion people. You would walk into rural Africa, into a tiny store in Uganda, and you'd see a computer running our operating system. I remember walking into like a store in Jakarta, and they got all these computers lined up, this big computer store, all these computers lined up, and it was Endless OS, Endless OS, Endless OS, Endless OS. It was so cool. And then Microsoft gave Windows away for free and wiped us off the map. So the challenges we've had, the wins we've had, the challenges we've had. Again, Microsoft isn't solving these problems. And so do we give up? We can't give up. There's got to be another way. And so that's when we started saying, okay, well, if the manufacturers are basically going to use Windows because Windows is being given away for free to them for those deployments, then we're going to have to figure out how to sell these computers ourselves. And so that's when we started a sales team in the field, on the ground, actually selling computers hand to hand. Can we build little sales teams that can go and propagate these things? And what we found was this giant aha insight, which is, well, they can't afford full-on laptops. They want full-on laptops, but they can't afford them. But if you allow financing to come in, suddenly they can afford them. And so we had a partnership with the biggest bank in Guatemala, really excited about it. But when the bank financing actually came through, they would reject 80% of all the applicants and then 90% of all the applicants because of a policy change. So you have 100 people that you present to. On average, 30 to 50% of them wanted the computer, wanted what we had, would walk up and say, sign me up. Imagine that. How many products can you present to someone for an hour and 30 to 50% say, I'm going to spend a month's worth of my income in it like that? The answer is a computer. So the challenge was that 80 to 90% of them were being rejected. So the head of our Guatemala team said, like a drumbeat, the biggest challenge is not the device cost. The biggest challenge is easy access to financing. And we discovered the access to financing issue was also a problem in Africa, where people were selling these solar panels, these home solar panel units. We had a team in Africa that realized, holy cow, you can connect the dots between what they're doing over here and our problem over here, build the same thing into the computer, and now all of a sudden you can make it so that people can top off payments, and every time they pay, the computer works. And so that was this kind of chapter of realizing, aha, took us years to build that technology into the operating system so that it's super robust, super secure, super reliable. Around the same time, two things happened, two things in sort of rough sequence. One was we realized that kids were playing video games in our operating system, and that was like the way to hook them. That was the way to get them. Like they would be surrounding, I tell the story, they're surrounding their computers, shouting math numbers at each other because of the games that they were playing. Like that level of engagement we didn't see in any of the other apps. And so the insight was, well, let's go build a bunch of video games that can teach them to play and teach them while they're playing. So we partnered with the people who built Minecraft EDU and a bunch of other educational gaming products. Phenomenal team, and we said, okay, great, we're going to go build games to teach kids, in particular teach kids to code. And then COVID happened. When COVID happened, we realized that this is not an emerging markets problem. This is as much an America problem as it is an emerging markets problem. Common Sense Media and BCG issued a report. They did a big study, and they realized that 15 million kids in this country didn't have access to either or internet or device, computer. And when we realized that 15 million kids in this country had the problem that we had a solution to, we realized that we were going to chase that problem here as well as around the world. And so that brings us kind of full circle in hopefully a short enough period of time to That brings us full circle to what Endless is doing today. Through all those years, 3 insights: teachers and home parents and students can use games to learn. Second is internet access can be solved with storage. Third is financing through pay-as-you-go financing can unlock people being able to buy computers.